This is an NBC News special report. Here's Laura Jarrett.
Good day, everyone. We are coming on the air now with breaking news in New York, where a jury has just found New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez guilty on all counts in his federal criminal trial. The verdict just coming in just minutes ago. It comes, of course, after he stood trial for several weeks here on corruption charges, including bribery, acting as a foreign agent for Egypt, and obstruction of justice. It also comes after prosecutors say they uncovered bribes in the form of gold bars and hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash stuffed in pockets, stuffed in his various locations in his home. Since he was charged, Menendez stepped down as the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but he has resisted calls thus far to resign from the Senate itself. The jury deliberated for more than 12 hours over the course of 3 days here in Manhattan. I want to go straight to our Justice and Intelligence correspondent, Ken Delanian. Ken, Senator Menendez had fought these charges from the very beginning. He managed to escape conviction the last time that he was charged, and a jury ended in a mistrial. This one ending quite different.
That's right, Laura. This is a total victory for the prosecution and the Justice Department. Senator Menendez convicted on all 18 counts against him, and he was charged in a complex bribery conspiracy. And remember, the FBI found gold bars and $480,000 in cash in his house. And what his defense consisted of essentially was this wasn't bribery. This was gifts from friends cultivating a relationship. And his lawyers made that case passionately to the jury, but it just didn't fly this time. Coincidentally, that was his defense in the last case that you mentioned that ended in a hung jury. He was accused of bribery in that case. A friend of his, an eye doctor, had provided him gifts and cash. In that case, the prosecution didn't make their case. And the Supreme Court has made it much harder, as you know, Laura, to win these bribery convictions. The prosecution had to show here that there was a quid pro quo, that it wasn't just that the senator was receiving these illicit gifts that, by the way, he didn't declare on his financial disclosure form, but that he actually took official action in exchange for the gifts. That's the case prosecutors made, and the jury appears to have accepted it in total. Again, convicted on all 18 counts. Senator Menendez was charged alongside his wife, Nadine Menendez, who did not stand trial. She is ill with breast cancer, and we learned today that her trial has been indefinitely postponed. His two co-defendants, two New Jersey businessmen accused of paying him bribes, also convicted. A third businessman had been charged in the case, turned state's evidence, essentially testified against Senator Menendez. And that was crucial testimony in this case because along with the cash and the gold bars and the Mercedes convertible, the prosecutors had a witness who went into court and said, I paid the senator a bribe, and this is what he did for me. And this case had an added dimension of seriousness, Laura, because the senator was the powerful chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and the accusations here were not only that he did favors for these New Jersey businessmen, but that he took action on behalf of the government of Egypt. Essentially, he sold his office to a foreign power and was acting as an unregistered agent for the government of Egypt. That is an unprecedented charge to be leveled at a senator, and he has now been found guilty on all counts.
And it was certainly what made this case so different from the one in the past, where he was also accused of corruption in a scheme allegedly with his friend. But in that case, the jury didn't buy it. And as you mentioned, Ken, the idea of steering aid and weapons to Egypt, propping up a lucrative monopoly deal, disrupting criminal investigations in New Jersey, part of the story for why this case actually ended up being in New York instead of New Jersey this time around, right?
That's right. There were meetings in restaurants in Manhattan. You know, as you go through the different dimensions, there are so many different schemes alleged in this case, now convicted by the jury. It's hard to follow the twists and turns. So there's one separate strain here where the senator was helping an Egyptian businessman get the exclusive contract to provide halal meat to Egypt, and in return was doing favors for the government of Egypt at the behest of this business person, including, he had influence over foreign military sales, and he had great influence over how the Senate Foreign Relations Committee dealt with U.S. policy essentially toward Egypt. And what the prosecutor said and what they've won a conviction on here is that he took action in exchange for cash bribes from this Egyptian business person. And then separately, he took action on behalf of these other New Jersey business people, trying to intervene with prosecutors to quash criminal investigations against them, unsuccessfully, according to the accounts of the prosecutors. But nonetheless, they were, in some cases, very troubled by a senator coming to meet them and essentially try to strong-arm them into going easy on his friends in exchange for money and for gold and for, in one case, a Mercedes convertible.
All right. Ken Delaney, our justice correspondent, appreciate your reporting. For more on the impact in Congress up on the Hill, let's bring in our Capitol Hill correspondent, Ali Vitale. Ali, walk me through how his calculation possibly changes now that he has a conviction. He has been steadfast, defiant at times, and pushing back on calls for him to step down. He obviously gave up his powerful position there on the committee, but so far really resisted calls for him to step down completely. Do you think this changes that calculus?
Well, look, technically speaking, Laura, there is nothing that says that just because a senator is convicted of a felony that they cannot serve in the Senate. Now, past precedent shows that all of the other people who have been indicted have either stepped down or their term has lapsed. But certainly more than 30 Democratic senators, his own colleagues here on the Hill, have called for him to step down, saying that he's lost the trust of the public, even as they said that the courts should work their will and that he should be innocent until now, of course, proven guilty. The way this impacts the calculation, of course, is what we're going to be tracking quickly, because it's probably going to reignite those 30 Senate Democrats who have called for him to resign already. But notably, we haven't heard from the top Senate Democrat, Chuck Schumer, on this. The majority leader has been mum. Of course, in the meantime, we have seen on the political side, Menendez no longer running for re-election as a Democrat. Instead, he has a challenger there. He's running as an independent, at least for now. And our understanding, Laura, was that sources close to him said if this was a hung jury or if he were found innocent, he would continue in that run. Of course, that tracks with the defiant posture that we have seen him take in over the course of the last few weeks and months that this has gone on. But just in the last few minutes, we are now hearing from Andy Kim, the congressman from New Jersey, who is challenging Menendez for that Senate seat. His statement reads in part that this is a sad and somber day for New Jersey and our country. He then says, I called for Senator Menendez to step down when these charges were first made public. And now that he's been found guilty, I believe the only course of action for him is to resign his seat immediately. The people of New Jersey deserve better. We have also seen his fellow New Jersey colleague, Cory Booker, come forward in the past few weeks and months and say that Menendez should step down. Of course, all of this likely to be reignited here on Capitol Hill now that this verdict has actually come down.
Yeah, the verdict obviously very different than the charges itself. Appreciate it, Ali. I want to bring in NBC's News legal analyst Danny Savalas. Danny, let's talk about potential avenues for appeal. But before I do that, I just want to bring folks up to speed. We have 16 counts, guilty across the board here. His attorney's upset. We're getting this reporting from in the courtroom. His family wiping tears from their eyes. The clerk reading the jury the verdict back. The judge telling them essentially their job is now done and thanking them for their service. What potential avenues, Danny, does he have for an appeal? It would obviously be an uphill battle, and he is facing serious prison time here if it doesn't work.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about how the Supreme Court, in a case not too long ago, made it harder for federal prosecutors to prove corruption cases. But at the same time, in 2023 alone, the Department of Justice reported some over 300 new bribery and corruption convictions. So DOJ is still prosecuting these cases, and DOJ is still having a lot of success here. It's not a big surprise that he was found guilty on all counts. I've defended these bribery and corruption cases. They are really difficult to defend, no matter what the Supreme Court has said recently or before that. And the defense is usually the same thing, because it's the only thing left to your defense attorneys, which is the government's put on all this evidence of gifts coming to the official, and the government's put on evidence of things the official did to benefit that person who gave the gifts. And the defense is usually left with the only arrow in the quiver, which is there's no formal written agreement of this quid pro quo. But the jury can infer the existence of that this for that arrangement, and they do make that inference, because it's just too hard to argue that an official got this many goodies and gifts and that he just happened to separately and without consideration of those gifts do something that incredibly benefited the giver of those gifts or that person's friends. And the law allows to consider the benefits that go to a friend. It doesn't directly have to be to the person who handed over the gold bars or the sports cars.
And in the meantime, Danny, do you think the judge will allow him to stay out of prison on bail? He's not going to be taken into custody.
Right. So at this point, after conviction, the judge sets a sentencing date, and usually they continue the terms of pretrial release. So I would expect that because Menendez was out, he didn't have any problems prior to trial while he was out that I'm aware of, that he would be allowed to continue that. And then even at sentencing, once the sentence is imposed in federal court, they often get a turn-in date, which might be several weeks out from the actual sentencing. They may not take him into the side door and start his sentence immediately, although it happens. In all likelihood, he'll get a turn-in date. And then from there, his attorneys may argue or ask for a stay of his sentence pending appeal. But the challenge there is that those usually involve two factors. Number one, there has to be an issue for appeal that's interesting or likely to result in an overturning of the conviction. And secondly, the sentence itself can't be too long. Now, we don't know what that sentence is yet.
Right.
The problem with financial crimes is that the dollar amount of loss often boosts that sentence into the stratosphere, which makes it less likely that he would be successful to getting a stay of his sentence pending appeal.
Danny, just quickly while I have you, do you think this changes the calculation for Nadine Menendez, who's obviously facing her own charges? Do you think she now takes a plea?
Most statistically, I would just be going with the numbers in saying that most federal criminal defendants take guilty pleas. And by most, I mean over 90%. And those that choose to go to trial, over 90% are convicted. So I would expect that Nadine's attorneys are probably having a facts of life discussion with her about the landscape now. And by the way, one of the other things that could happen theoretically is some of these defendants could decide to cooperate after the verdict to try and help their sentence, which makes life even worse for Nadine.
Danny Cevallos, appreciate you always jumping up so quickly for us. Our thanks also to Ali Vitale and Ken Delaney. And again, Senator Menendez, the Democratic senator from New Jersey, found guilty on all 16 counts. That concludes this NBC News special report. We will have much more ahead on NBC News Now and Nightly with Lester. I'm Laura Jarrett. Thank you for watching.